The Queen's forbidden love. Human in her kingdom, a love that defies centuries of tradition, a powerful queen from a mystical realm, and a man who was never meant to be. What happens when an empire's most sacred rule is broken, when a forbidden love threatens to unravel everything? A kingdom divided, loyalty shattered, and forces that will stop at nothing to maintain control. But is the Queen's heart the only thing at risk? What if this forbidden love has the power to change everything we thought we knew? Hold on. The truth is far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Welcome, dear viewers, to Dominion, Rise of Humanity. Thank you for joining us today. Before we dive deeper into this tale of forbidden love and unimaginable power, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our audience all around the world. Is your city a silent witness to history in the making? So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and let's uncover what's been hidden from the world for centuries. In a kingdom hidden deep within the forests of an ancient world, a world that few humans had ever seen, the air was thick with magic. This was no ordinary realm. It was a place where mythical beings ruled, and the laws of nature were controlled by forces unknown to the outside world. The inhabitants were not like humans. They had powers, wisdom, and beauty beyond anything imaginable. But even among these beings, there was one who stood above them all, the Queen. She was a ruler of extraordinary grace, a queen whose lineage stretched back centuries. Her ancestors had been the protectors of the realm, and she had inherited their wisdom and power. The Queen's people, known as the Elyrians, had always lived apart from humans, believing themselves to be far superior. The laws of their land were simple but strict. The most sacred of all was the rule that no Elyrian should form relationships with humans. To do so was seen as a grave betrayal, a threat to the balance that had kept the kingdom safe for so long. But the Queen's heart was not like that of the others. She had grown tired of the cold, lifeless rules that bound her people. She had seen the world beyond the kingdom, heard whispers of humans living in their own lands, struggling to survive. She had begun to question everything she had been taught. Were humans truly as inferior as the Elyrians believed? Or was there more to their existence than she had been led to believe? One fateful day, as the Queen walked through the garden that surrounded her palace, her eyes met those of a man human, like the others she had been taught to view as beneath her kind. His presence was unexpected, and his gaze, filled with curiosity and defiance, struck something deep inside her. He was different from the humans she had known. There was something in his eyes that spoke of a strength she had never seen before. The man had come to the kingdom not by chance, but by design. He was a messenger, sent to deliver a message to the Elyrian rulers. His people had suffered at the hands of invaders, and they had nowhere else to turn. He was not here for war, nor for riches, but for help. Yet, as he entered the royal gardens and stood before the Queen, something changed. The air seemed to hum with an unfamiliar energy, an energy that neither of them could explain. As the Queen gazed at him, she felt a pull, a connection that she could not deny. It was as if the very essence of the universe had aligned to bring them together. For a moment, she forgot about her duty, forgot about the laws, and saw only the man before her. He was not like the others. He was different, but with that realization came fear. Fear of the consequences. The consequences of breaking the most sacred law of the Elyrians. The consequences of loving a human. The Queen knew the risks, yet she could not deny what she felt. Her heart, for the first time in her life, was torn between her duty as the Queen and the emotions that stirred deep within her. She could feel the weight of the kingdom's expectations bearing down on her. She was a queen, and queens did not fall in love with humans. But what if the heart was stronger than the laws of the land? What if the power of love could defy even the deepest traditions? As the queen stood there, her eyes locked with his, a dangerous game had already begun. The rules had been set, but the future was uncertain. Would the queen choose love, or would she uphold the law that had defined her people for so long? The arrival of the human messenger in the Elyrian Kingdom was not just an event, it was a turning point. The news of his presence spread quickly among the Illyrians, and the reactions were immediate. In the heart of the kingdom, where power and tradition held their grip tightly, whispers of this forbidden meeting began to stir the air. The queen, always composed and focused on the well-being of her people, had made a choice that could change the fate of her kingdom. For centuries, the Illyrians had maintained a strict boundary between themselves and humans. They were powerful beings, blessed with abilities that no human could ever possess. The laws of the land reflected this belief. No Illyrian was allowed to form relationships with humans, not for love, nor for any reason. The kingdom had lived in peace, and this peace was safeguarded by the firm divide between the two races. The Illyrians had always considered themselves superior, and the notion of humans being worthy of more than mere subjects was simply unthinkable. Yet, the queen's decision to allow a human into her presence was nothing short of revolutionary. It was a direct challenge to the centuries-old laws that had kept the kingdom safe from the perceived chaos of human influence. The queen's heart, it seemed, was leading her down a path that few could follow. And for those who dared to question her authority, this was the beginning of something dangerous. The first to voice their concerns was the Queen's Council, a group of trusted advisors who had served her family for generations. They were the keepers of the old ways, the protectors of tradition. To them, the presence of a human within the royal palace was an affront to everything they stood for. Their arguments were logical and cold, speaking of the dangers of mixing with a race they saw as inferior. The Illyrians had spent centuries cultivating their strength, their culture, and their magical abilities. The idea of weakening that foundation by introducing a human into their midst was unthinkable. But the queen's decision was not one easily overturned. She had felt something stir within her that she could not explain. This human, unlike any she had encountered before, had shown her something beyond the realm of her knowledge. His presence was a challenge to everything she had been taught, but it also opened her eyes to possibilities she had never considered. Could humans offer something of value to her kingdom? Could their wisdom and resilience complement the power of the Illyrians? As the days passed, the human's presence in the kingdom began to have ripple effects. The people, too, felt the shift. For the common Illyrian, the queen's choice was seen as a sign of weakness. Some began to question her authority, wondering if she had lost sight of her duty to her people. The ruling elite, who had always enjoyed the comfort of their power and privilege, feared the change. A human in the palace meant disruption, a potential erosion of the very foundation of their society. Yet for others, the queen's actions were a glimmer of hope. Among the younger Illyrians, there was a quiet stir of excitement. They had grown up hearing the stories of humans, their struggles, their survival, and their resilience. To see a human standing in the heart of their kingdom was both shocking and inspiring. It challenged everything they had been taught, offering the possibility of something new. Could the Illyrians, with their power and magic, learn something from humans? Could they find a way to coexist? As tensions grew, the queen knew that her decision was not just about love. It was about the future of the kingdom. Would she be able to hold her people together? Or would this forbidden love tear the kingdom apart? The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of the realm hung in the balance. The queen stood at the edge of her palace, overlooking the vast enchanted gardens that stretched before her. The warm breeze carried the scent of jasmine and rose, but in her heart there was a storm. She had always known her duty. As the ruler of the Elyrian Kingdom, she had been raised to uphold the ancient laws, to protect her people, and to maintain the purity of their way of life. Yet, in the presence of the human messenger, everything she had been taught seemed to unravel. It was not just his presence that had captivated her. It was the way he had looked at her, not with fear, nor with admiration, but with respect. It was a look that spoke of equality, a look that saw beyond the surface of her beauty and power. For the first time in her life, the queen felt something she had never expected: vulnerability. Her heart, always bound by duty, was now torn. Was this love? Or was it something more? Something deeper than the affection that many of her people would call a weakness? For days the queen had wrestled with these questions in solitude. It wasn't simply a matter of personal desire. It was a matter of strategy. Her people, the Elyrians, had long considered themselves superior to humans. They had kept their distance, both physically and emotionally, to preserve their power. They had watched as humans struggled to survive in their own kingdoms, and they had built their society on the belief that the magical, the eternal, must remain separate from the mortal, the fleeting. The queen had never questioned this belief. Until now. What if the answer to her kingdom's future lay in breaking down those barriers? What if the human who had come seeking help had something to offer that her people had never considered? Could their knowledge of survival, of living without the luxuries of magic, provide insights that would make the Illyrians stronger, more adaptable? The queen's mind raced as she weighed the consequences of her growing feelings. She knew that if she allowed this human to remain in her palace, it would send shockwaves through the entire kingdom. The council would never accept it. They would see it as a direct threat to the foundation of their society. The queen had spent years building alliances with other Illyrian noble houses, ensuring that her rule was secure. Allowing a human into her inner circle could easily fracture those alliances. It could lead to rebellion, and worse, to war. Yet, the more she considered it, the more the queen realized that this might be the only way forward. The Illyrians were strong, yes, but their strength was tied to their isolation. They were powerful but stagnant, bound by ancient traditions that no longer served them. They had never faced a true external threat, and perhaps that was their greatest weakness. The human, with his different ways of thinking and his raw determination, could offer something her people desperately needed: change. The queen's motivations, though deeply personal, were also strategic. She understood the risks involved, but she also saw the potential for something greater. In her heart, she believed that by breaking the laws of tradition, she could bring her kingdom to new heights, blending the strengths of both worlds, Illyrian magic and human resilience. But could she convince her people of this vision? Could she lead them into a new era? Or would the weight of tradition crush her dreams before they had even begun? The stakes were higher than she had ever known, and the path ahead was unclear. Yet, as the queen stood alone in her palace, she knew one thing: the time for change had come. And nothing would stop her from seeing it through, not even the cost of her own heart. From the outside, the kingdom of the Illyrians appeared as a peaceful and powerful entity. An ancient society, ruled by magic and steeped in tradition, it seemed, impervious to the struggles that plagued the more mortal worlds. However, for those beyond the boundaries of this enchanted realm, especially for those in the alien scientific community, the events unfolding within the kingdom had sparked a flurry of interest and analysis. The queen's forbidden love with a human was not merely a political or cultural issue. It was a phenomenon with far-reaching implications that extended far beyond the borders of this mystical kingdom. To alien researchers observing the human-Illyrian interaction, There was a crucial question. What did this forbidden relationship mean for the broader intergalactic dynamics? The Elyrians were a powerful race, one that had remained isolated from the greater universe for centuries. They had developed their own complex system of governance, culture, and technology, far different from the humans they viewed as weak and inferior. Yet, the Queen's breaking of the ancient laws was a direct challenge to everything the Elyrians had built. The immediate question for the aliens was whether the Queen's actions could trigger similar shifts in other isolated species. What impact could a shift in such a dominant race have on the balance of power? The human, though seemingly insignificant in the eyes of many, might represent a threat or perhaps an opportunity. Was it possible that the love between a human and an Elyrian Queen could open a rift between isolationist species across the galaxy and the rest of the known universe? Alien researchers knew that change, especially when initiated by an unexpected force such as love, could often be the catalyst for chaos or opportunity. And in the context of interspecies politics, such a transformation had the potential to redefine entire galaxies. A kingdom that had built its strength on isolation, now faced with the integration of an outsider, could be destabilized or could become the bridge to new alliances, new technologies, and even new forms of interspecies governance. At the same time, alien analysts realized that this situation was far from straightforward. The Elyrians were not simply a powerful race, they were a deeply philosophical and introspective one. Their isolation had been carefully crafted over centuries, a response to the fear of vulnerability. Introducing humans into their society, particularly in such a personal and intimate context, could threaten the very foundation of their social order. The implications were not just political, they were also economic. The Elyrian economy had been built on a system of magical resources, one that depended on the exclusivity of their power. If the Elyrians began to question their separation from humans, if they began to integrate the knowledge of the human race into their own society, could it destabilize their magic-based economy? Could human knowledge disrupt their access to the rare and potent magical resources that fueled their economy? To the alien researchers, this situation was one that demanded urgent observation. What would the Elyrians do in the face of this unprecedented challenge? Would they suppress the Queen's actions, upholding the old laws at all costs? Or would they embrace this shift in their society and allow for a new, integrated future? More pressing, perhaps, was the question of how these developments could affect intergalactic relations. If the Elyrians shifted their views on humans, if they opened their kingdom to new forms of interaction, how would that affect the relationships between other powerful races in the galaxy? The Queen's decision could very well create an unexpected ripple effect that reached far beyond her kingdom. For the alien observers, this was more than just a story of love. It was a test of the future. Would the forbidden love between the Queen and the human serve as a lesson in breaking boundaries and fostering interspecies cooperation? Or would it unravel the carefully constructed systems of power that had held the universe in balance for centuries? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, the Queen's love would not only change her kingdom, it could change the entire galaxy.